Last couple of weeks, we read that delightful passages from Aurobindo's essay, The Delight of Works, where Aurobindo reveals to us the threefold delight: the delight of the instrument, the delight of the worker, and the delight of the master. To receive and share in the delight of the instrument, Aurobindo bids us not to have any egoism, not to act under the stress of personal choice, not to act because I would prefer to do this or that work. He goes on to reveal that if we practice this equanimity to its ultimate, we would be equal when the instrument is used or when it is put aside, or even if it is broken and cast back into the red heat of furnace, to be forced again and again and again for his great work. This is the delight of the instrument. The next is the delight of the worker, and here Aurobindo reveals to us that worker is nature, and we think we are working, but when we identified with the instrument and believe I am the instrument, and when we identify with nature and believe I am the worker, then we make a great mistake, and that's when we live in dualities and have pain and pleasure, suffering and joy. But for the pure delight of existence, we have to step back, first from the instrument and then also from nature. In nature itself, there are two movements, a lower movement and a higher movement. And if we want to be a good worker, just as a good instrument has to be free of egoism, it has to be plastic and supple in the hands of the master. So beautifully Aurobindo reveals to us, the sword does not ask where it must strike. It cannot choose. It has given itself in the hands of the master. He may choose to wield it, maybe wield it against one whom we love. He may choose to keep it aside forever, never to use. The sword does not itch that I am a sword, you must use me. It's not restless, not excited. It's there, quietly happy to be by the side of the master. Once in a while to feel his hand, his touch upon the hilt, and that's enough for it. Or sometimes the master may break it and put it aside because he wants out of the same material to wield a new and more mighty instrument for his purpose. Similarly, to be a good worker, one has to ascend from the lower movement of nature to a higher movement. And the higher and higher the movement, which means the lesser the intrusion of desire and preferences, the more mighty becomes the action and the more delight of the worker. And third, he tells us the delight of discovering that we are part and parcel, portions of the Divine Master. When the work is over, where do we return? We return back to his breast, safe and happy. There is a very interesting, there are many interesting stories, of course, and 2-3 of them are coming to my mind simultaneously, but one of them is when the great battle of Mahabharata is over and Yudhishthir and Arjuna, they are going to the heavenly kingdom. Of course, only Yudhishthir seems to have gone along with his dog, and Aurobindo takes a very beautiful humorous dig at it when he is asked, "Sir, only Yudhishthir, one reached that kingdom." So Aurobindo says, "And you forget the dog also." But nevertheless, that's about the bodily achievement. But when all the Pandavas reach the heaven, they see that even Duryodhana is sitting there because he has after all reached before them. So they are quite perplexed. What is this fellow doing here? He's not supposed to be here. So he's explained, you don't know the way the Leela works. You see, he also had something divine in him. So, what was divine about him? After all, he was a Veer. He may be stupid, he may be anything. But he took the challenge and fought in the battle. And except for the last day, when, he was absolutely cornered, he fought face to face. So there is something in him which also had some touch of divinity, and that part of him is sharing the kingdom of heaven for a while. That is his share. So all of us are part and portion of the divine, but here we have come into this work. Sometimes it's a wrestle and sometimes it's an embrace. But in either case, it's nature and the instrument clashing or embracing each other, but deep inside there is the peace, quietude and the delight of the divine presence. This is about the individual. What about the movement of large spaces of time and a large body of human beings? What about the movement of the world itself? Because world itself is an instrument of the divine for a great manifestation. It is a field of manifestation. What happens there? And Aurobindo reveals to us it is essentially the same thing, except that instead of an individual, individuals are his instrument. And the spirit of time, the Zeitgeist that acts through these individuals, is the force that moves men. And men believe that it is they who are great, they who act, they who conquer, they who fall, they who win the victory, they who suffer defeat. But it's the game of Kali, who at one point, within a moment, turns the present into past. That is how the name Kali comes. Kali is literally comes from that. She measures the movement of the eternal. Eternal is an undivided unity in terms of time. There is no, in the eternal there is no division of time. But in the evolution, there is a division of time. There is the past and the present and the future. And these three are only for our convenience. What we call today's past was present yesterday. What we call today's present is already on the way to becoming the past. And what we call as the future will one day be the present and again pass away into the past. And who goes marching through these spaces of time, turning the present into the past, is the great dance of Kali. That is how Kala, Mahakal, she comes from the bosom of Mahakal, the guardian of time. And out of his bosom emerges his own power, Kali. And she sanctions certain things. And some things which she has sanctioned, she takes them away because their time is over. In the West, it's called as the Zeitgeist, the spirit of time. And in a certain sense, even the story of the Sphinx, which we all know, who allows a few to pass to discover the mystery of the eternal, but others he devours. Now this spirit which Aurobindo has described when he was asked, who is Sphinx? He says she is the evolutionary energy. Kali is the evolutionary energy which is constantly carrying this earth upward and upward. She doesn't wait for a moment. That's why she is swift and impetuous. Sometimes she can act directly in a particular individual or a particular moment. But she is carrying the whole world in her lap or trampling under her feet. So this Sphinx, she devours, but she also lets a few pass. And what is her action? Aurobindo describes very beautifully in one of his poems, A Vision of Science, where he says, through the spirit which is going into the past and the spirit of the present, which would one day go away in the past. So she is telling, and there is a third waiting for the future which is yet to come. And he says, thou thinkest term and end for thee are not. But though thy pride is great, thou hast forgot the Sphinx that waits for thee beside the way. All questions thou mayest answer but one day, her question shall await thee that reply. For they who cannot die, she slays them and their mangled bodies lie upon the highways of eternity. So this is the dance of Kali. And she stops the moment she steps on the eternal, on the body of the eternal, Shiva, on whose body the dance is taking place. So this is what we can read today. It's a very, very powerful essay, The Greatness of the Individual. It's about the Zeitgeist, the time spirit, which is embodied in a particular yuga. In all movements, in every great mass of human action, it is the spirit of the time, that which Europe calls the Zeitgeist and India Kala, who expresses himself. It's also called as Yug Dharma. It changes with time and evolves. The very names are deeply significant. Kali, the mother of all and destroyer of all, is the Shakti that works in secret in the heart of humanity, manifesting herself in the perpetual surge of men, institutions and movements. So when the mother gave this command, men, countries, continents, the choice is imperative, truth or the abyss. It's the command literally emerging from the spirit of time. It's the spirit of time who speaks through her at that point of time. Just as it is the spirit of time who speaks through Krishna when he is asked, what is your intention? What are you trying to do, making me stand on this battlefield, facing my own loved one as my foeman? And he says, Kalosmi bhava lok shekrat pravaddo. I am time, the destroyer of all things, and I have manifested to destroy these peoples. So there is this spirit. Things have emerged out of her. So she is the mother. She is the great mother. And she is also the destroyer, because when their purpose is over, when the time is over, the utility of the instrument is over, to the extent it could move along her lines, it is absorbed back into her. So she is Kali, the mother. Bahakal, the spirit within whose energy goes abroad in her and molds the progress of the world and the destiny of the nations. His is the impetus which fulfills itself in time, and once there is movement, impetus from the spirit within, time and the mother take charge of it, prepare, ripen and fulfill. That's why Sri Aurobindo gives, out of the 4 aids, he gives one of the aids as the instrumentality of time. Things must ripen, they must prepare, they must ripen, and then they must fulfill. So that is how she moves through she is the evolutionary energy, the great energy of transformation. And that is why it's very interesting that Sri Aurobindo himself at at one point in his sadhana, the name of Krishna and Kali would spring up so spontaneously in him, and he would even sign sometimes as Kali. Not sometimes, for quite some time Sri Aurobindo has signed some of the letters as Kali. And he says that if the name of Krishna and Kali comes or awakens spontaneously within, it is something very beautiful, something very powerful. Because Kali prepares for the advent of Krishna, the sweet one. That's why the two go together. Even in Savitri towards the end, just a page before Savitri ends, we have, as she descends, there is on one side a spirit which is fierce, and along with that a peacock feather plume which is falling down. So this is the togetherness of Krishna and Kali, which prepares the field of manifestation. When the Zeitgeist, God in time, moves in a settled direction, then all the forces of the world are called in to swell the established current towards the purpose decreed. It's very interesting. What Sri Aurobindo is going to reveal to us next may come like a great shock to our human mind. But he says something very, very interesting. That which consciously helps swells it, but that which hinders swells it still more. And like a wave on the wind-swept ocean, now rising, now falling, now high on the crest of victory and increase, now down in the trough of discouragement and defeat, the impulse from the hidden source sweeps onward to its preordained fulfillment. So it is very interesting the way Kali works. When she fills the heart and mind of men the whole thing swells. It is that force which informs. And it's very interesting that that which would fulfill its purpose, that also swells. And that which opposes it, that also swells. It almost reminds of the bubble which must swell in order to break, because otherwise, it becomes easier to break it. And the instrument which is meant for the purpose, that also it informs and uplifts. Man may help or man may resist, but the Zeitgeist works, shapes, overbears, insists. That's what Mother has said. Fortunately, this work of transformation does not depend on humanity's consent. Well, if it consents, so much the better. If it doesn't, it will still fulfill itself, because it is the fiat of the Supreme. It is Kali who has sanctioned. She has gone into this work, and so will it be, because such is the command. The great and memorable vision of Kurukshetra, when Sri Krishna, manifesting his world form, declared himself as destroying time, is significant of this deep perception of humanity. So what is significant about it is that Arjuna wishes to cast aside his bow and says, this is a sin we do, and a great destruction of men and brothers I will forbear. Sri Krishna, after convincing his intellect of error, proceeded by that marvelous vision described in the 11th canto, the vision of the destroyer. And then Sri Aurobindo reveals, it is not as the slow process of time that Sri Krishna manifests himself. It is as the Zeitgeist consummating in a moment the work carefully prepared for decades that he appears to Arjuna. So again, just as in the worker, there are two ways that the energy that works in us can operate, the lower nature and the higher movement of nature. So also the spirit of time can manifest as a slow rhythmic movement, like small little wave coming on the ocean. Or there are moments when it manifests as a giant tsunami that in one day or one moment can change the entire geography and the history of a place. There have been civilizations which have been drowned in such giant waves. We hear about Atlantis, and we hear about even 900 years before along one of the coast of India. So this is how she operates, and in the Hour of God, Sri Aurobindo speaks of it when he says there are moments when the spirit moves among men and the breath of the Lord is abroad upon the waters of our being. There are others when it retires and men are left to act upon according to the strength or weakness of their own egoism. So these are the two movements of time. One, the slow dance, the measured dance of Maya, when Yama is at play. Yama is the guardian. He is also death. But when Kali destroys, there are two aspects of Kali. When Yama destroys, he has a measured movement. Yama is to restrain. So his task is to restrain. So his destruction is a measured destruction. But when Kali destroys, she destroyed in one moment what centuries have built. And it's very interesting. So because people often wonder, that Mother has spoken even behind volcanic eruptions and earthquake, this is the force of Kali that is operating. So how does she destroy? What is the vision behind this grandness? And she reveals, in fact, in the ancient traditions we have, that there are two forms of Kali. It's very interesting. One is Dakshina Kali and the other is Bhadra Kali. And the names itself are very interesting. Dakshina Kali, the word means the right perception. So she destroys with the right vision and perception. Men may miss, they may not receive the right impetus and they act according to egoism. If they act according to egoism, she destroys them. But she fulfills her purpose. So there is the Dakshina Kali who destroys with the right perception and the right vision. And there is the Bhadra Kali, the auspicious one. Because this destruction is a preparation for a new creation. We have these lines in Savitri. He saw in night the eternal's shadowy veil, and death as a cellar in the house of life, felt in destruction, creation's hasty pace. So this is the aspect of Kali, the twin aspect. All have been moving inevitably towards the catastrophe of Kurukshetra. Men did not know it, Those who would have done everything possible to avert the calamity helped its coming by their action or inaction. She uses everything. She doesn't care. When the command has gone to pull down the scaffolding, she does that. So men help either ways, whether they act or even if they do not act, they help her purpose. Those who had a glimpse of it strove in vain to stop the wheels of fate. Sri Krishna himself, as the Nishkam Karmyogin, who does his duty without regard to results, went on that hopeless embassy to Hastinapur, but the Zeitgeist overbore all. It is said about the Mahabharata war that it was so imminent, and it was asked, can't it be stopped? Krishna is God himself. He surely can stop. So he says, you don't know, there are 3 ways you can stop the Mahabharata war. None of them will succeed, but. So what are the ways? He says, 1, kill Bhima. The moment, if you can kill him, find somebody who can kill him. There are only 6 persons who had the strength to even face Bhima, let alone kill him. He says, kill Bhima. Mahabharata war may be averted. Cut Draupadi's hair. She is Kali incarnate. Mahabharata war may be averted, because she had kept her hair free and flowing, that only with Dushasan's blood I am going to braid them. And he says, 3rd, tie up Sri Krishna. That is another possibility. So, this is said by Sahadev. Sahadev is he is in the Mahabharata as a wise and sage one who meditates, and he is open to deep truths. So he says, well, maybe you may find somebody who can kill Bhima. Bhisma can kill Bhima, it's possible. So Karna can kill Bhima, it is possible. Maybe you can convince Draupadi to cut her hairs. But how will you tie Krishna? There is no rope big enough to tie Krishna. And Krishna has something to reveal. He says, there is a rope. Last time we read about the rope, the chain that can tie him. He says, the rope of love can tie me. So it is only that manifestation which can prevent, but that manifestation is not yet to be. So he says, Sri Krishna himself, who knows he is come as the Yug Dharma, the Zeitgeist, still does his Nishkam Karma. It was only afterwards that men saw how the rivers speeding towards the sea, how like rivers speeding towards the sea, like moths winging towards the lighted flame, all that splendid, powerful and arrogant Indian world, with its clan of kings and its weapons and its chariots and its gigantic armies, were rushing towards the open mouths of the destroyer, to be lost in his mighty jaws, to be mangled between his gnashing teeth. In the Leela of the eternal, there are movements that are terrible as well as movements that are sweet and beautiful. And very often, the terrible prepares the sweet. It is after the great vision of the Kurukshetra that we have the beautiful and peaceful reign, which would be followed for 2000 years almost. So this is the movement of time, the double movement. The dance of Vrindavan is not complete without the death dance of Kurukshetra. For each is a part of that great harmonic movement of the world, which progresses from discord to accord, from hatred and strife to love and brotherhood, from evil to the fulfillment of the evolution by the transformation of suffering and sin into beauty, bliss and good. Shivam, Shantam, Suddham, Anandam. Till there is peace, till there is inner harmony, till there is purification, the dance of Kali goes on. But this is the condition of Ananda. Again, in the same vision of Mahabharata, towards the end there is a very interesting story. When all the Kurukshetra is over and the gods come and tell Krishna, well, your work is over. He says, oh, is it? You must be knowing better. He tells the gods, please tell me. He says, well, you have finished Kansha, so Mathura is free, Jarasandha is gone, and the entire Kuru clan is destroyed. What else is left for you to do? He said, there is something else left to be destroyed. What is it? He says, the whole Yadava once, my own people, they are drunken with arrogant pride. They think they are my own people. So you don't know their gigantic pride. They must destroy themselves. Then the field will be clear and free for something beautiful and new to emerge. So he waits for that to be destroyed. And of course he says, I have one more work to do. I have to put down Dwarka inside the sea. Because it is something very beautiful, and Vishwakarma has created it with new elements. It is said that Dwarka was created with those elements which were not found in the world. So, because it was meant for the Lord incarnate, so all the things were brought out, it is said, from the sea. But basically it's that, new elements of consciousness with which it was built. But men are not yet ready to inhabit it. Therefore it must be drawn back and the Yadava clan destroyed, then my work will be over. So here is Aurobindo describing that aspect of the divine. And how does it work? Even without thee. So this is how Arjuna is told by the Zid guest. Yet it is to him, he was the sole hope of the Pandavas, and without him their victory must seem a mere dream. So Arjuna thought when he flung aside the bow. Yet it is to him that the Zid guest proclaims the utter helplessness of the mightiest and the sure fulfillment of God's decree. So there was one way. If Arjuna could flung the bow, most likely the war won't happen. Because Pandavas won't dare fight against all these with Arjuna on the side. So Arjuna, like a good man, says, look, I don't want to be participated in this kind of thing. I love peace and quietude. So let me go into the hermitage. And to him Zid guest says, even without thee, all they shall not be, the men of war who stand arrayed in the opposing squadrons. For these men are only alive in the body. In that which stands behind and fulfills itself, they are dead men. So living and dead, according to us, is based on the breathing frame. But according to Zid guest, those who are united with the spirit of time and embody it and are here to fulfill the will of the divine in a certain space of time, they are living and the rest are dead. Those whose hour is over. It's very interesting because it's often this question is asked that Master, the divine Master, is equal to all. He has no partiality. Everything is He and He is above good and evil. So how does He act? So this is the way He acts, that He operates through the spirit of time. What He sanctions at one point of time, at another point of time He absorbs it back. So it looks as if He is taking this side or that, but He is taking no side. It is just His one movement emerging out of His delight, and men become instrument of His great play. And all this is for the evolutionary energy to move on. So therefore the spirit of time, Kali, is the evolutionary energy. Whom God protects, who shall slay? Whom God has slain, who shall protect? The man who slays is only the occasion, the instrument by which the thing done behind the veil becomes the thing done on this side of it. That which was true of the great slaying at Kurukshetra is true of all things that are done in this world. The greatness of this teaching is for the great. It is very difficult to accept this side of creation. Aurobindo says in Essays on the Gita, they who cannot see the vision on the battlefield of the Kurukshetra, the vision of time the destroyer, are not ready for the integral vision of the divine. So, to be ready even for the integral Godhead, one has to be willing to see this side of divine who is terrible. And as he says, Him too we must adore, for she too is the mother, and she prepares for the new creation. Those who are commissioned to bring about mighty changes are full of the force of the Zeitgeist. Kali has entered into them, and Kali, when she enters into a man, cares nothing for rationality and possibility. She is described in the triple soul forces. She says, I care not for virtue or for sin, but do the deed that God has put into my heart. She doesn't reckon. I reckon not of virtue or of sin. I care not for the angry frown of heaven or the red heat of hell. When she moves, she moves. She is the force of nature that whirls the stars in their orbits. That's how time and space are created. So she is the force of nature that has whirled the stars into orbit. The whole movement through spaces of time, she is the one. Lightly as a child might swing a ball, and to that force there is nothing impossible. She is Aghatan Ghatan Patiyasi. Very skillful in bringing about the impossible. So that which men call impossible, not only can she bring it about, she brings it about with such a skill that only at the end men realize, my God, how did she accomplish it? During the moment when humanity is passing through, it cannot see. It sees nothing but darkness, destruction. But the hope is because at the center of the storm, there is the presence of the Master. So whether it be the gentle hand of nature or the terrible hand of Kali, it is the Master who is shaping us. And that's why there is hope. We should not have hopes on us human beings. It is because the Master is present in creation that there is hope. She is the Devatma Shakti, the power of the Divine Spirit hidden in the modes of all its own workings. Sagunair Niguda. And she needs nothing but time to carry out the purpose with which she is commissioned. The entire forces will obey her. That's all she needs. It doesn't matter which individual, which instrument, this or that, she will fulfill it. She moves in time, and the very movement fulfills itself, creates its means, accomplishes its ends. It is not an accident that she works in one man more than in another. He is chosen because he is a likely vessel, and having chosen him, she neither rejects him till the purpose is fulfilled, nor allows him to reject her. So she possesses the instrument and takes hold. She doesn't allow till the purpose is fulfilled. Men become instrument. The thought which thou thinkest, now Aurobindo is referring to the Gita, and takest refuge in egoism, saying, I will not fight. This thy resolve is a vain thing. Nature will yoke thee to thy work. Now here we may say, well, Krishna was there to tell Arjuna. What happened in the great battle, the Trojan War? Aurobindo says it was a momentous event in the history. 4 great events, this was one of them. How does the Zeitgeist fulfill itself? There is no Krishna by the side of any Arjuna. So Achilles withdraws. He is the great hero. He withdraws from the war. Simply because Agamemnon has taken one of the priestess or the girl whom Achilles wants to have for himself. And he retires. He says, I am not going to fight. So days after days, and without Achilles to fight Hector and all this great army is an impossible task. So how does the spirit of time does? It inspires and informs his nephew, Patroclus, who goes into the war. One day, he steals the shield of Achilles and his helmet and goes into the war. So Hector thinks it is none else but Achilles, and he is itching to fight him. So they have a fight, and sure enough, Patroclus is dead. Now when he is dead, and Achilles' charioteer comes and tells him, look, your nephew is dead. That's the time Achilles plunges into the war. And as the scene goes, the Xanthippe is full of blood because he has gone with that spirit. So he embodied the Zeitgeist. But the other part is that when the purpose is over, he was meant to carry it to a point. So people would think Achilles is great, but it's not the greatness of Achilles. Achilles is mighty and invincible. But the day Achilles' task is over, all that is required is for Paris to hit him in the heel, and Achilles drops dead. So that is what Aurobindo is revealing to us. It is not the greatness of the instrument. When a man seems to have rejected his work, it merely means that his work is over and Kali leaves him for another. So that's all it means. When a man who has carried out a great work is destroyed, it is for the egoism by which he has misused the force within, that the force itself breaks him to pieces as it broke Napoleon. Some instruments are treasured up, some are flung aside and shattered, but all are instrument. This is the greatness of great men. Not that by their own strength they can determine great events, but that they are serviceable and specially forged instruments of the power which determines them. So it is always. The men who prided themselves that great events were their work, because they seem to have an initial hand in them, go down into the trench of time, and others march forward over their shattered reputations. So it's very interesting that we often, when we see the action of Kali, human mind can be confused. So and so is so great, so and so was so great. She cares nothing for the greatness or the weakness of an instrument. Anything she can lift up, and when she picks up, if the instrument collaborates, she lifts it. When the instrument's work is over, or it swells with the egoism and pride that I am the doer, I am an instrument of mother's work or God's work, she leaves it aside and casts it. And over there, she marches, the spirit of time marches over their shattered reputations. Those who are swept forward by Kali within them and make no terms with fate, they alone survive. The greatness of individuals is the greatness of the eternal energy within. So this is from Collected Works of Aurobindo, volume 13, page 29 onwards. There is a very beautiful talk of Nalnida on Aurobindo's life, where he says, starts so beautifully, that the greatness of the great is the greatness of the divine in him. So it's not other aspects, but it is that aspect which really comes prominent in the forefront. That is the greatness of the great.